Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the City of Groton Special Committee of the Whole for Monday, September 11th, 2023. Clerk Bakura, please call the roll.
Mayor Hedrick, Deputy Mayor Debo, Councilor Norris, Councilor McCabe, Councilor Sheffield, Councilor Carter, and Finance Director Uhas are present.
Okay, thank you. Under new business, the first thing we have is Public Works crack ceiling FY24. Bill, if you could come up and walk the council through this.
Good evening, all. So tonight I'm here to request the approval of the contract with Connecticut Seal Coating in the amount not to exceed $20,000 to be paid from the approved fiscal year ending 2024 highway operating funds. This is our annual maintenance that we do for the roads. The investment into this saves later on for further, deeper, harder damage. So it's corrective measures to stay ahead of the game. And there's a number of roads, if you wish, I can read them off to you, that we're addressing. So we do this every year, like I said, and we keep a running queue of the roads. So this year is going to be lower, so it's going to be Mumford, Allen, Chicago Avenue, Lower Pequannock, Burgess Place, Chapman, Warner, looks like Minor, Division, and Park Avenue. Any questions? I'm happy to help.
Okay, questions or comments? Councilor Norris?
Thank you. I was just going to ask, how does this affect the ratings that we have for the streets in the city?
Right, so that's a great question. So we have a document, right, that keeps the pavement condition index, right, PCI, and we work with that with the town. So each year after we perform the work, we adjust those, but truly it's not, it's preventative maintenance. The sealing will last 2-3 years unexpected, right? Expected roads will last you 18 to 30, depending on the base and everything that goes along with it. It really continues and the livelihood and extends it, like I said, about the 3 years. I can adjust the PCI on the thing, but the crack filling isn't really worthy of doing that. I don't think the town is truly adjusting them for, it's really just a maintaining. So it's really not raising the score, the pavement condition index score, but it's really maintaining it. That's the way I look at it.
Would you say then there are any streets in the city right now that need a complete overall reformation?
So if you look at the capital improvement plan that goes out to 5 years, that really gives you a great, I didn't bring that with me,
yeah.
but that does give you a really good running tab
Yep.
on where we're at, and that all comes off the PCI and everything else.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, all right. Thank you,
You're
Derek.
very welcome.
So one of the things that we're looking to do is obviously prolonging the life, because as long as we maintain them, then one thing we could do is you could do the mill and overlays, or if they get below a certain PCI index or PCI number, then we end up having to do a full depth reconstruction, which is like what we did on Pequannock,
Right.
what we did on Thames Street, and those are quite expensive.
Right.
So, Councilor Sheffield?
Bill, will you need to do the same area next year, or will you be going to a different location?
So we'll summate, everything, once the season we're through, come around spring, we'll get a look at everything. So you do this work at either spring or fall, right? So the asphalt contracts back, that's when it opens up the cracks, and then when you address it. But we do a running tab every year and get a look at it. We do have a big queue for it, but it can change depending on how bad the winter was, and those things that come along, the elements,
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll take a motion to move this to the mayor and council meeting of September 18, 2023.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and stay there. So the next thing is the ARPA review. Internally, we reevaluated, and what I did was I removed the roof and we are going to fund the roof in another way. There's several different ways we could fund the roof, but, so taking that off, what that takes us down to now is $2,595,145.21. We have a total of $2,600,000 that has been authorized for our ARPA funds. So what I'm asking the council to do is review this list, and if you're good with this, this will become our list of record. Ron is looking at the words in the final ruling about commitment, but I was talking to John Burt this morning and what the town did, and I'm gonna follow suit in addition to having Ron do his thing. But we'll do a resolution next week with these projects, and this will then be our commitment of the projects that we're gonna fund through ARPA. One of the things that Ron's gonna validate is whether or not that's acceptable, or do we have to have RFPs for all of these things in order for that to be considered a commitment. Now, we have until the end, 12/31/2024, to commit, and then 12/21/2026 to spend the funds. But my intent is, if the council moves this tonight to next week, once it's voted on and approved, we will start doing a research, start getting things ready, and start bringing you RFPs. That's not true. Start bringing you resolutions. So, Deputy Mayor Depot.
I know, I said this in the last meeting, the roof, in my opinion, we'd have to redo the roof anyways, so theoretically, that's baked into what we already planned for financially. I also think that, the ARPA funds are intended to either recoup from COVID or affect changes of things that happened in COVID or improve residents' everyday lives. There's a lot of goals that kind of came out of the purpose for this money. And I think a lot of the projects we have on the list directly relate to those things, COVID premium pay and even, improving our parks and those types of things, I think are very important. And, we could go all day thinking about other things that we could do, but removing the roof allows us to fund all of these projects, and I think that is the most streamlined and best move forward. And I have been in favor since the beginning of not continuing to delay it, so I would like to move it sooner rather than later. I don't, pushing up against the deadline, I think, is not a good idea. Especially since, we may need to get all the RFPs in, and that's gonna take months and months and months to get the RFPs for all of these things. So, I would be in favor of moving it forward sooner rather than later, so that the staff has the time to, because they're gonna have to, put their proposals, complete them, put them together, and put their resolutions together, and that's gonna take all of our staff a lot of time. So I'd rather get it approved so that they can get started on that process. So that's kind of what I think about that.
Councilor McCabe?
Since we'd be slightly under our 2.6, if there's a remainder balance, is it possible to move it to something like the small business grants or?
I don't know. We'll have to look and see. What,
I'd want
The
to use
re-
every penny that,
I understand, I
money,
understand. So,
right?
I agree, so do I. For example, the tennis courts is a relatively recent quote, so I have confidence in that, but some of these quotes for the large capital
Yeah, it would
may
have to
be
see how
off,
we-
so
yeah.
I want to have a little bit of buffer there. If we have money left over, I agree with you, I intend to spend every
Okay.
bit of that.
Okay.
And I'll come back to council, and council can decide then what you want to do.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilor Carter?
You mentioned we're gonna follow suit with the town. Do we know, you guys may know, I guess I should know, did they use all their, or did they, what's it called, not confirm, but commit all their funds?
I don't know the answer, do you know? I don't know the answer to that.
But my only, and I agree, we have to get things in. I think, in my opinion, to figure out if we actually need a referendum, right, referendums?
Yes,
I think, well, you don't know that, or we,
no, you do not need a referendum.
I thought you were gonna get a word on our referendum. Didn't you have to do some research to see if we needed to get some, like, something?
You talking about what I said earlier?
No, what did Deputy Mayor say, if we need to get,
RFPs?
RFPs, yes, like you say, I haven't been here for a while. Yeah, if we need to get RFPs, I think that's pretty important to know if we have to,
Well, so let's take a real quick look. If it's a CIP, you're gonna need RFPs. If it's over, what rule of thumb do we wanna use, just 10,000? If it's over 10,000, it's gonna be an RFP.
so then my only thing would be, because you said we have till 2021, December 31st of next year, so essentially a year and 3 months, right? Right?
Yes?
Yes. So my question to that is, like, a year and 3 months is, to me, it's kind of a long time. I mean, COVID happened just like that, is it smart for us to kind of, to confirm our limit when we still have a year and change to utilize funds? What if something comes in and say, I don't know, next summer,
You mean another COVID?
another anything, we don't know.
Then that money there will be if there are monies, that monies will be for that, not for, this is for the COVID period. So if you go into the interim ruling and the final ruling, it talks, there is a specific time frame.
I
Of which-
understand that, but I think you're missing what I'm saying.
Okay,
What I'm saying
please,
is that we
you have the,
There's a reason why we have a year, we have to 2024 next year, right? And I understand the fact that we wanna get this stuff in, but I'm saying there may be potentially within this next year and 3 months that we have, that another cost may come up to the city that we could use this money for, or some extra money for, some of the money's for it. Do you understand what I'm saying that?
I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that's the case, and I don't think it applies.
You don't understand, do you wanna articulate more for me, what I'm saying? 'Cause I don't think you understand what I'm saying.
Let me finish this email. I'm texting John Burt.
You can change. You can change. I think that's what you're asking is, if another project comes up that needs to get done within the
Yes,
next year.
that's what I'm saying, if we're
Yeah.
confirming this, is that gonna not allow us to move money or use this money for something else?
Right. I'll leave that to these guys, but my understanding is, even though it's confirmed, if something happens, you can switch.
But that means it's gonna have to come back to the council. So delaying and saying, well, we're gonna delay just in case, doesn't make sense. If something comes up, then the council can come back and say, you know what, we wanna take this off. And if the RFP has not been issued, or the money is not, if we have not committed to funds, then the funds are still there.
That's what I was saying. But I didn't know that we could do that. The confirmation to me, is like, so why are we confirming it? Why are we,
I am asking you to confirm that these are the projects that you wanna do.
yes, that's what I'm trying to say. But again, does confirmation, do we know, I think you just answered that, right? The confirmation, if we're confirming this now, right, does that mean that within this next year and a half to confirm something else, we can move and come back, you're saying you can move and you come back to the council to confirm another project?
If something else comes back and we still have funds, we can do that. As soon as council says we're gonna move forward with this, I'm gonna move forward in obligating the money so we can spend the money. I am not going to delay and possibly lose the money.
And what I'm asking is do we as a council, is that smart for us to confirm all the funds and not hold some amount available to confirm later if we need to?
In the very beginning, the council's concern was that we want to know what your plan is, we want to know what you want to do, because we don't want to do that. We don't want to wait, because it may something come up at the end. So I'm trying to understand.
Because you're not listening to what I'm saying.
Okay.
When I say come up, I mean something that we are not aware of. Could be anything. That's what I'm saying.
Well, and if something comes up that is a capital issue or something else, we have other funds that we can use. Deputy Mayor Depot, you had a clarification or
I
comment, and
I
then
was just
I'll,
gonna ask,
go ahead.
so we need to give an authorization so that, this was my understanding, that we need to give authorization so that staff can begin actually working on these projects. Because they can't start putting the RFPs together and asking for funds until we put the authorization forward for it, right?
that's correct.
Okay.
Counselor McKee?
I'm also concerned that the longer we wait, the prices go up. So things will get ticked off the list. So if there's some things that we really know we wanna address, we should get the ball rolling so that we can get the prices locked in before they go up. Things don't seem to be coming down in price.
No, and you have supply chain issues and things like that with length of time and
Yep.
things like that. Counselor Sheffield?
My only concern, I guess, with all the projects would be the tennis courts, as far as that RFP, since it's basically $1 million and something of that significance, I would like to probably get a real good look at before making a commitment to that.
I don't understand your question. What do you mean a real good look at?
As far as the
She-
RFP, as far
she-
as, you know, is that gonna be the solid number, or is that something that can go over the amount, and then all of a sudden we may not have the funds?
Well, any of them can go over.
Right,
That is probably one of the most recent, because she did that in the last couple of years, right? Because I think before we put this on her, she went out to get a quote. You may or may not remember. And if you don't remember, I'm not gonna ask you to commit to it.
It was updated. I'm looking at the list from September of 2022, and it was 750 at that point. So it was updated from sometime from September of
okay, so we're at,
2022.
right, so we're at 750 instead of 990?
Right.
Is that what, okay.
So, Town Manager Burt just responded, we have around $160,000 or so left. That's ballpark. Not really intentional, just didn't have any more immediate projects they wanted to fund. So that may help answer part of the
Give them
question.
some.
I mean, that actually does answer my question. I'm trying to figure out what best practice. Is it smart to leave a reserve? I guess that's probably what I was opening up with, you know? Or should we just straight up? I'm with. I know the inflation, all that stuff. I want to get this done. My question is with a year and a half left after, with unknown things that come, it was just a general question. I think you guys took it kind of different, obviously.
Well-
But that was my intention.
There are a lot of municipalities around here that have already spent their money. I know Norwich was out early, New London was out early.
Okay, then that answers
The
my question.
town got out earlier than I did, and then it has taken us a little while to get to the point where we are today. But hold on, let me go here because you haven't spoken. Counselor
Thank you.
Piazza?
Thank you. So just on the estimated prices here, I'm sorry, the estimations of what it would cost for these projects, are we looking, is that including contingencies or it's not?
I'm not sure how to answer that.
We just left it to the department heads to give the quotes, so I'm not sure. Some may have built contingencies and some may not have not. I'm not 100% sure. It was
So we're gonna have to go back and get quotes.
Right.
Now, if we end up where we spend all the money and it's a CIP and it's something that the council wants, we do have some capital money that I could use to make sure what I'm about to say is right. I think we have some capital money we could use to offset the difference, right? Okay, so
So if the
I'm not
contingencies.
saying spend away. What I'm
Right.
saying is, we have some contingency here now, and if these are severely underestimated, then we do have methods that they can be completed.
Okay,
Did that answer your question?
yes, thank you.
Where am I? Counselor McCabe, and then
Okay.
I'll come to the deputy mayor.
I think if we could just, get a clear understanding, the council, what the word commit means when you're saying, let's commit to this list. Does this mean we are giving authorization for the different department heads to go down this list and go for an RFP? But we're still gonna have to have a conversation once that RFP comes back, whether we're gonna proceed. Is that?
That is
a fair
correct. So
statement?
what I'm asking the council to do is this the list of items that you want us to proceed with ARPA funding? If it is, then I'll ask you to move it to the mayor and council meeting of 9/18. There'll be a resolution. This will be attached to the resolution. This will now become our working list in order to work off of and to fund projects.
So it's
These will be
basically,
the
this is our
authorized-
shopping list, we're gonna put the things in the cart and see if we have enough money at the end of the day to check out, basically.
Ron, do you have a,
Yeah, just looking at this very quickly, besides the first two on the list, most all these will come back in some form of a resolution as well for your approval on top of it. So what
Absolutely.
you're, and I don't want to speak for the mayor, but it's more just giving the master plan, like a guidance that these are the projects we want to move forward with.
Right.
And then they'll individually come back to you for approval. So using the tennis courts, for example, if that bid came in at 1.5 million, we may say, wait a minute, let's take a look at this project. We may not want to go that road, or yeah, we still want to do it. We're going to maybe replace another project with that, or like the mayor said, use another funding stream for that overage. And then vice versa. If there's if something comes in, if that came in at 700,000, that would leave us with another 300,000 to allocate to other projects, which we may need to come back with additional projects, as we may spend it all prior to that, if that makes
and
sense.
just looking at this, the top two was 4,000, 3,000, but because it's to the COG and to the ARC, I would think I'd still want to do a resolution on that. I'm thinking, so Ron, even if we did the premium pay and it's going to different employees, I think I'm leaning toward having a resolution authorizes the premium pay overall, and then individually finance has the list of who will give the premium pay to.
I think that would be a good idea, just then you'd have the legislative history for all of the funds being
Right.
spent on the ARPA.
So let me go on the record now that if you approve, regardless of what you approve, whether it's all this list or not, every one of these that we spend money on will have a resolution so that we close the loop. So this is authorizing, and then the resolution will close the loop on the expenditure of the funds. Deputy Mayor Depot.
I was just gonna say, just wanted to clarify, because we still have, our regular rules all still apply.
That's correct.
We still have to vote on expenditures over $10,000 regardless of where the funds come from. So it doesn't matter that we're getting ARPA funds for these, we still have to vote on them.
Right?
One suggestion or request, I guess, is can we take this spreadsheet? I'm guessing you maintain the spreadsheet, Ron? No?
Nope, I maintain the spreadsheet.
Can we change, once we vote on it to push it through, can we maybe change the column that right now has the pricing in it? Well, I guess it would stay estimated costs and add a column
Yep.
for each time it comes to us?
Well, what I
To
can do.
mark like what the resolution
Actual.
price is and
Absolutely.
what, and an updated end cost. So
So-
that we can kind of see as the projects go, which I know
Yep.
would be done internally.
Right.
Obviously, because that's, you'd have to track, I'm sure you're tracking the money, so you're doing that internally. But since we've been using this spreadsheet format, I think it would be helpful to get, like, for example, for the clerk, when we get those resolutions in our packets,
Right.
to add that as supporting documentation with the updated numbers, so that we can see like, oh, we're not gonna hit the number, or it's gonna be a little over, so we might need to reassess.
I agree with you. So, if you look at this information, the information's in the columns now, the presented to council, and it's not gonna matter, right? So I'm looking at the columns. So we can hide the columns, and we can add new columns for, you got the estimated cost, what the actual cost is, what the difference is, and then if it's an overage, what the funding source is, right? So that you guys can have a running tally, the council can have a running tally of what we're doing so that you know where we are. Because this is gonna take us a couple of years to spend. And as the deputy mayor said, we do have to follow our normal, purchasing policy requirements and the charter. So, I thought I saw a hand somewhere else. Was that you? Okay, Counselor Sheffield and then Counselor Norris.
Looking at this list, there was something that I had thought about. I mean, it's a, great list of projects to do. But what I don't see is anything for the youth in the city. If there's something that, a project for the young kids that could be done, something educationally or something like that, could be used for these funds, if that's something that
Well,
we thought about.
If we have, we've been talking about this for a year, and this is the list to come out.
Yeah.
The youth programs can also come out of Parks and Rec, out of programming, right? So, there's no reason, to do that. You know what? I don't need you. Well, and the reason I had you here was in the event that there were gonna be questions on the roof. So I apologize, Bill.
There will be.
Never mind, Bill, stay where you are, because we're not done. So, so when it comes to programming should come out of the normal budget cycle.
There's swings, there's exercise equipment, swings.
Yep.
Basketball.
But the other thing that we talked about up front and was very clear about is I do not intend to start a program that is gonna have to be maintained once ARPA funding is gone. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about that.
Yeah.
Right, because of the impact of the taxpayers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, things like programming and stuff like that, I think should come out of the normal, O&M budget from Parks and Rec. Counselor Norris?
Thank you. I have quite a few questions. So the very first one, Southern Connecticut Council of Governments, I thought in their presentation, that $4,000 was for them to help us through the process of spending this money. Now, if we're not using them any further,
This was for the first year.
what did they help us with in the?
They did, they helped us a little bit, helped me, and they helped us with the applicable rules and what we could use money for and those kind of things. So we were one of the few municipalities that did not give them money.
Got it. Right. And then, so the rain gardens, I get it's a match. I get that, and it's good money worth spending. But I also look at things, and let's talk about this. Who will maintain that in future years? Is that gonna be Parks or Public Works? Have we kind of determined what the annual cost will be, or 5-year costs of replacement? Have we anticipated that in terms of operations moving forward?
So when you're talking about rain gardens and bioswales and things like that, the locations of where they were gonna be was gonna be on the municipal property, so therefore that would fall under Public Works, and that would be part of their, maintenance budgets.
Okay,
You know, one of the things that we're getting ready to do now doesn't have anything of this, to do with this, but as an example, is we're getting ready to do some dredging in Lake George, some maintenance dredging so that it'll properly drain off. So, and that is part of O&M, operation and maintenance.
got it, all right. So we may see an increase in someone's budget specific to these kind of activities moving forward. May.
Well, yes. Now, let me explain why. For example, one of the things that I am working on now, municipal-wide, is an asset management plan, because what we've done in the past is we run things to failure. And then once they fail, whoops, we need money. Oh, this happens to be in the middle of a budget season. Where are we gonna find the money? It's not a good way to run a business. So when when I say possible some money, it's about the maintenance, PMS, preventive maintenance system, inspections, maybe touching up For example, you went to our basketball courts, we had cracks that wide in the basketball courts. You go up to our tennis courts now, we got cracks that wide. And so we as a municipality need to be better about how we're inspecting and maintaining our properties, because if you can get them when they're little, then they're not gonna grow big and get big, and then you have to replace the whole thing.
So moving with that train of thought is the roof. Do we have or have completed a professional assessment of the roof, its damage, its longevity, its maintenance? Where are we? Because my next question is gonna be, if it's not here, what mechanisms do you think you have in place where if we decide, or you decide, yeah, we gotta not have a public works guy go up there, but versus a professional organization, and they come in, now you got maybe a year, year and a half, where do you see that funding coming from? Because that's gonna be a big nut to swallow.
Well, Bill, you wanna address his issue, and I'll address the funding issue.
Thank you.
Sure, I'll speak to it. So I had Centermark come in, they've done a bunch of work for me while I was at Pfizer. Very good company, really good with rubber roofs, right, EPDM. They actually did a roof assessment for me. The guy was here probably 4 days, and I'm happy to share that with you. I have the whole document. And that's where I came up with the estimated cost. There was 2 proposals. One was for cover, and one was to strip it down and replace it, and that's where the value came in. And that's truly the right thing to do, because you're really putting a Band-Aid over a problem, right? So, but the one currently on the roof, we have a gravel and ballast roof, so, tar and ballast, I should say. And we're gonna strip that off and put a rubber roof on. I've done a bunch of work with them. They are maintainable. You work that into, you have an assessment done every year. So when you re-roof it, I'm gonna be guaranteed for X amount of years, let's just say 10 years.
Yeah.
They're gonna have a person come in, do an assessment, and do repairs as needed, based off the warranty. Or if it's something that happened, we dropped a piece of equipment and cut it, it'll be a repair, right, a
Right.
corrective measure. But that's really the way to do it. And then you have, you set up, like the mayor made mention, your computerized maintenance management program. You set up PMs in there and, annual assessment or semi-annual assessment, and have our guys go up and look for visual things. That's really on top of the warranty piece, and that's really where you're at. So you should get 30 years out of a rubber roof, and that's target where I like to be at. They're warrantying it, I think, for 10, but guaranteed, expected is 20, but I see them go much, much more. And, I think it's the right thing to do, and you're right, as far as the pricing goes, it's been going up and creeping up and creeping up. But we had some work done on it in 2015, and with that came a 10-year warranty, so I have another 1.5 year warranty on that piece. So there is some time still with that model, that piece, so we have a little bit of time in there. The mayor made mention of deferring this a little bit, but by the time we get to that, this will be about that'll be the end of the warranty, right? So,
Sure. Did a great job of saying what will happen.
yeah.
But in the evaluation of, how would they rank the condition of the roof at present? Is it
That's-
something that, hey, a quick $10,000 job or nothing at all can hang over for another 1.5 years? Or is it, no, you're still within the next year, 1.5 years, I'm assuming,
No.
bonding $1 million to get this done?
Yeah, so
Which is-
it's important to make mention, right? So the company that we had do the work in 2015 is different than the company that came in,
Right.
total different assessment, so there's no bias to it at all. They're saying it's at its end of life.
Right.
And I mean, it's ready to go, but we do have, a 1.5 years, 2 years worth of warranty, where when I have a leak, and we need to be timely with the leaks, where I can contact this company, they'll send somebody in and do a quick repair. So I do have a couple of years of coverage, but in my experience, and same thing that you'll find in this assessment, is that it's at its end of life.
Right.
So if your question is about
Thank you.
sense of urgency, Is that where you're going?
Well, there were three questions. Is it a sense of urgency? Yes or no? And kind of got an answer there. So then the second one is, let's say it isn't a sense of urgency.
Is or is not?
Is not.
Okay?
So we push it out a year and a half, 2 years from now. Do we have enough depth in our debt service to take on, as with everything else that's on the docket, potentially whatever you would bond for that to happen? Because I'm just going with, it's like your own personal house. Do you fix what needs to be fixed before you put in a new tree? I mean, that's where I'm trying to figure out how to navigate through this.
Well, and I'm taking the roof off, so you don't have to navigate that. Okay?
Well,
You
yeah.
do not have to navigate that.
Well-
Now, I'm gonna answer your question about the roof,
Yeah.
okay? Ron, do you happen to know what our debt ratio is off the top of your head?
I do not off the top of my head, but I
Okay.
know we're on the lower side
We are,
currently.
so my philosophy is to try to keep that debt to equity ratio down very low.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so that we have room. Now, let me address the roof. So the roof right now is roughly what we had said is around $1.2 million. There, we have, internally, we've had discussions. There's a couple different ways, and then, so you could totally bond it, you could take it out of capital. I do have some capital money there, although I don't want to dwindle that capital account down because of the V that we got coming up with EB, right? Because we've talked about that, about what the V is, about expenditures coming up, and building 600, 604, 605 coming on, but for the first 5 years, you're only getting 20% of the tax revenue, not the full 100%. That's not till year 6. So I have some money set aside that if we need to draw into to levelize taxes, we can do that. So we could bond, we could take out the capital, we could also set aside X amount of money, for example, the next 2 or 3 budget years, set aside $300,000, or you can do any combination of the above. So we are in a situation financially that this is not a problem. I'm not saying it's not a lot of money, but we're in a situation where we could do this. One of the things that Bill and Ron and I did last week we got together? Last week was to look at bonding projects. For example, I have the roof, I also have the windows that we want to do, and we also have the front landing that we want to do. And those 3 projects altogether put us a little over 2, right? Understand your caveat that there could be growth. So we're a little over 2 there. We're looking to see, and I had Bill to go give me an additional 5-year capital plan of things that we might need to do. For example, the one thing that we have on here, the switchgear room at $400,000 might be more than that. So one of the things I'm looking at doing is possibly bonding out, but have a larger bond project because and I'm not talking exorbitant, I'm looking 5 million or less. I'm not looking to go with a very large bond of and I would only recommend bonding for things that we need to have, right? Not nice to have things that we need to have. So the other thing on the bonding is you gotta go through the Freeman. Obviously, I gotta sell it to you guys first, and then the Freeman have to authorize that. Also, on the bonding, so the bond costs, the attorney fees and everything else are pretty much fixed. So if you bond $1 million or you bond $5 million, it's pretty much the same amount. So, and it's every time. So my thing is, we need to be smart, identify everything and go out with one bond package. And that's what I'm looking to do. I'm not ready to bring it to council yet. We're still having internal discussions. But specifically for the roof, I wanted to have this discussion because if I was gonna take it off the ARPA, I knew the question was gonna be, okay, just because you took it off doesn't mean it doesn't need to be done. How are we gonna do it? When are we gonna do it? What's the sense of urgency to get it done? And how are you gonna pay for it? So does that answer some of your questions?
Yes.
Okay, and triggers others, so please go ahead.
Well, just one. So, understanding the process that you're gonna go through here, because it sounds like we're gonna have staff work on these, bring them to council to get approved to move forward and spend the money, on a rolling basis. So, you're also saying that if this 2.6 ends up being slightly higher, we do have additional funding either through CIP.
Correct, we have capital
Yeah.
that we have set aside.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We have several $1 million there. Period, let me put a period on that, because that's an amount. But I am hesitant, I don't want to spend all that down, because somebody said, well, don't bond it, spend it all down. Then you get into the discussion about when you bond, do you want future generations to pay for it, and all those kind of things, and there's philosophical discussions, but the concern that I have is, I still don't know what that V is gonna be like that back here. And we've also, we have a loss of revenue and, for Pfizer for one, amount, which is around what, 275, 300 a year? Somewhere along there. There's another, there's an arbitration that's going on now between Pfizer and the town, and that has the potential to be another, several $100,000 loss of revenue. The good news is, the gain in revenue, even at 20%, from the 600 building, 604, 605, will offset that loss of revenue.
Right.
That's the good news. What I don't know, and we've done a mock projection, but we don't know what the actual expenditures are gonna be. And we don't know if there's anything else that's out there in the future, either from a loss of revenue point of view or from an expense point of view. And that's what I wrestle with, in the out years,
Right. So promise, last question.
okay?
It's actually a request.
Okay, what's your request?
So with the, tennis courts,
Yep,
is it possible to include an ad alternate in the RFP to redo the path that goes from the parking lot up to?
that's gonna be a separate project.
It is, okay, thank you,
That's a separate project that will be in next year's budget.
thank you, sir.
And the answer is yes. I'm not gonna include it here, but the path, I'm fixing that.
Thank you. I'm done.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to move this list and the resolution associated with it, and I don't have a sample resolution, to the May and Council meeting of September 18, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Okay? And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out, staff. Thank you for being here and for what you do every day.
Thank you.